The base is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It's a Saturday. It's a power hour. We'll get you caught up on everything going on today in the FA Cup, in Spain, in Germany, in Argentina, in Mexico. Lots of games around the world. A few games called off due to snow all over España. We'll get into that. We'll get into the updates from yesterday as well. We'll get into the latest in the Moises Caicedo sweepstakes because it feels like that's what it's turning into. And we'll hear from John Nelson and Jarrett Smith, who are both joining remotely today. What's up, guys?
Morning.
It's what we do.
Yes, yes. John is in another state, as he is prone to be from time to time.
Occasionally, and yes, we are chasing after the replacement for the Beast, and so that will be number one on the assignment once the show is over today.
Sometimes,
wait, what, the
John...
Beast is done?
Hold on, because sometimes John just has this thing where he thinks that everybody knows exactly what he's talking about. Talking about replacing the Beast could mean a whole lot of things.
True.
Why don't you clarify a little bit for the listeners?
The 1997 Toyota Camry that I have been using as my mode of transportation has pretty much given up the ghost at 357,281 miles. And so now we are getting after the replacement for said vehicle and should be closing that deal today.
Very nice. Do you know what it is?
In theory, it's going to be a not quite 1997 Nissan Murano.
97 Nissan Murano?
No, well, that's no. I'm saying it will not be quite 1997. It's a 2010.
Okay.
Got 126,000 miles on it, so the use is about average. So we'll see what it is, and it's got a lot of the fancy things associated with cars. But no, it is not a 1997 replacement for a 1997 car.
Yeah, it's kind of like
Might actually have a CD player in it.
It's possible.
I think it does.
I don't know if John has any CDs.
I do, but I'd have to find them. But the 97 Camry actually had a CD player too.
Oh, fancy.
Yeah, I know. Both tape and CD.
This is going to mean that John has a newer car than I do.
I don't know if that's good.
I don't know either. But I'm driving my Civic until the wheels fall off. So
as you should. That's what I did with the Camry, and so it was not the wheels that are falling off, but every time that you travel at least a half a mile or more, and you see steam coming out of both the front of the car and from the sides of the hood, it's time to get a new automobile.
Yeah, that
sounds like the Studebaker that Fozzie drove in the Muppet movie.
That would be accurate. Yes, and that's not good. You don't want to be driving Fozzie's modes of transportation. It's not good.
No. I've already had one auto flambe in my life. I don't want a second.
No, you don't want that. All right. You got FA Cup this morning. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with the results. Chorley got a win, and everybody was a little surprised because they were the favorite coming into this. Derby had... Did they have a bunch of positives, or did they have a bunch of players in isolation due to being around positives?
Players in isolation was what I was reading into all of the absences. And so the whole first team was not there for this match.
Yeah, that's what I didn't think it was a whole lot of positive tests necessarily. But yes, no first team, and they lost 2-0 to Chorley. John, why don't you tell us what you know about Chorley FC?
They'd already beaten Peterborough and Wigan in this cup run, and they have, when they win in their locker room, the players will sing the Adele ballad "Someone Like You."
Okay.
And I don't know why they thought that a tragic love ballad would be a rallying tune, but that is what they've done, and the video is out again once again this morning after knocking off Derby. They are a tier in the sixth. They're in the sixth tier, non-league, and so good on Chorley. The magic of the FA Cup once again, and so you have a bunch of footballers singing Adele ballads, and that's for the third time in a row. So I guess they're going to keep singing. And I think Monday is when we get to see the next round of matchups. But sixth tier side Chorley gets the Duke against Derby County this morning.
Yeah, that and that was expected because it wasn't Derby's first team, anything close to it. Nottingham Forest beat Cardiff City 1-0. Norwich won 2-0 over Coventry. Luton Town 1-0 over Reading. Everton 2-0. Needed extra time to beat Rotherham United, and Millwall won this morning over Boreham Wood. You got a bunch of games going on right now. An early goal for Sheffield United over Bristol Rovers, and Sheffield United's on the road there. They're leading 1-0. And an early goal for Swansea at Stevenage. At least... This is weird, at least according to SofaScore, and I don't see it yet because the game's up in front of me, so maybe it'll happen right about now. There it is. Perfect timing. All right.
Well done.
That's the delay. That's what you get. Good cross, good header from the top of the six, and Swansea takes the lead. Wickham is leading over Preston North End. Wickham's at home there. Arsenal's hosting Newcastle at 12:30. Manchester United hosting Watford at 3 o'clock. Those are probably the biggest games today in the FA Cup. Jarrett, what are your Celtic squad led by the great manager Neil Lennon? What are they doing this weekend?
They're doing nothing. They play Monday afternoon.
Oh, are they still
2:30 on ESPN Plus? They just got back from horribly planned and executed, and God only knows why they were even allowed to do this or why they thought it was a good idea. Trip to Dubai for winter training. Yeah,
not really a good idea there. Didn't look good.
No, they're full of bad ideas right now.
That's true. We'll see how they do on Monday. Has Neil Lennon said anything crazy here lately?
I don't think so, but I haven't checked. When they went to Dubai, I just kind of tuned them out. You idiots.
Basically, yeah.
What the hell are you doing? Yeah. Now, the only thing I've seen lately is people begging the front office, please, God, please don't give Scott Brown another contract. Just let him retire and move into coaching or whatever he wants to do. But please, God, don't give him another contract. And we talked about this when they were in their bad spell. Of part of being a club legend is knowing when to walk away and knowing when to slide into the background. So we're kind of waiting to see if he knows to walk away or kind of slide into the background. He's kind of been forced into the background. Not starting games, but just walk away, man.
Yeah, he could go be a lower-level street thug if he wanted to. I think he'd fit right in. That'd work out pretty well for him. Lower level, for sure, definitely.
Yes.
He'd want to be the guy headbutting people. In Spain, you've got the Athletic and Atleti game postponed because Athletic were on their way from Bilbao, and they circled Barajas Airport in Madrid for an hour yesterday. Were unable to land due to the snowstorm that Spain is dealing with at the moment, so they went back to Bilbao. That game's postponed, no rescheduled date yet, and it gets complicated for Atleti because they play Sevilla on Tuesday, so they couldn't push this game back a day. They would have played next weekend. However, Athletic are playing in the Supercopa de España on January 14th. Atleti plays Tuesday, then they don't play again until the 21st. Then it gets really crowded as you get closer and closer to Champions League, and where they start squeezing these games in could make it really difficult for Atleti. They've got a bunch of games in hand in Spain, but they're going to pile up, and they might be piling up at the worst time right around their Champions League return. So they are hoping not to see that.
Could you imagine Simeone convincing a team in the middle of a snowstorm, hey, we got to play. We're not going to give up a goal, and we're just going to play the meanest, nastiest defensive game in the middle of a blizzard.
Oh, they're going to tell Simeone no?
The most unenjoyable thing to possibly experience is playing against Diego Simeone in a snowstorm.
They would love it. Madrid is not happy with La Liga. They sat on the tarmac at Barajas Airport for around 3 hours, I think. 3.5 hours on Friday, waiting for clearance to take off. They ended up going to Pamplona. They are set to play right now. That has not changed as of yet to face Osasuna today at 3 o'clock our time. They're going to have to stay in Pamplona because it looks like Barajas Airport is closed until late this evening, so they don't know if they're going to be able to get back to Madrid tonight at all. All these teams are in these situations where in Spain you're running into some big issues with reschedules, and this is a pretty epic storm that they're dealing with at the moment. So keep an eye on other games. Elche and Getafe was supposed to be played tomorrow afternoon. That's already been moved to Monday. You've got Barcelona and Granada at 12:30, and have not seen an update on anything with that one getting postponed just yet. On the Barcelona front, Victor Font spoke, and Victor Font is one of the candidates running for president for the club. He insisted that Xavi will return to the club if he is elected. The quote that is attached to Victor Font with Marca, the newspaper based out of Madrid, he said, as of the 25th, which is the day after the elections, assuming Font wins, he will begin to supervise the entire football project. And once the season in Qatar is over in April, he will join the club. And he would come in as the sporting director, and if he felt like he wanted to take over as the coach, Font would be fine with him doing that. He's not the biggest fan of Ronald Koeman, but I think he has softened his stance a little bit that Koeman would be gone the first day he walked into the office. So we'll see where that one goes. We'll get into some rumors and stuff on other players here in just a sec, but let's get caught up on Moises Caicedo. All the reporting now is starting to match up. It is matching up from the Ecuadorian side, which had this earlier yesterday. Now Fabrizio Romano has it that it looks like it's going to be Brighton that is in the door right now for Moises Caicedo. That's the reporting that a respected journalist in Ecuador had, I want to say yesterday, early in the afternoon, and now it's picked up on the other side. I'm a little surprised, just because I don't know if going to Brighton is a better place than going to Atlanta right now. And yeah, I'm biased. I'll admit it. It's, I think, a different conversation if we're talking about a top half team. But, John, Brighton might not even be in the Premiership next year. They're going to have to fight a relegation battle here. How willing is Graham Potter going to be to playing a new player in the team, even one as talented as Moises Caicedo, when they're trying to stay up?
That's the big question for me, too. And I have this feeling that Potter is going to stick with the lineup that he's been trotting out recently. And any kind of introduction of a new player, unless Caicedo comes in, if this does end up, coming to the fore where Caicedo joins Brighton, and absolutely impresses the ever-loving daylights out of him to where he can't resist leaving him out of the starting 11. That, to me, is the biggest question. It's like, it's that whole idea of, all right, so my number one thing is for us to stay up. Do I upset my lineup apple cart and bring in somebody new? And it's just, my gut feeling is that if Caicedo goes to Brighton, that he won't get the run that he deserves with a player that is as talented as he is, just so Brighton can stay up.
Yeah, Brighton's 3 points clear of safety right now. Their last match in league play was a 3-3 draw at home with Wolves. They play tomorrow in FA Cup as they travel to Newport County. They are back in the Premier League on the 13th, where they go to Manchester City. You look at the schedule coming up for where he might be able to slot in depending on work permit, which should be fine. It's actually changed in a weird way to where it's easier for South American players to get work permits if they're playing in Copa Libertadores, so they're playing with their national team, than it was before. It's harder for smaller EU countries for those players to get work permits, where before you didn't need one. So it's going to change the way that Premier League and Championship clubs recruit. So we'll have to see how that goes over time. But Brighton, back in league play, they go to City, they go to Leeds, they host Fulham on the 26th, which is a massive game right now because Fulham's 3 points back. They host Tottenham, they go to Liverpool, then they go to Burnley, which is another massive game because Burnley's right there with them. it's like feast or famine for them with what they have coming up. There's not going to be a lot of room to just work a new player into that. I don't know. Again, I'm biased. I'm not going to lie about it, but I think he would be better off playing for Gabriel Heinze for a year or two and then getting the move that he would want to a Manchester United or a bigger club. I don't know if he gets that after going to Brighton and potentially getting relegated. The figures are not out there from reputable sources yet. I have not seen them. I have seen numbers thrown around, but not from the sources that I trust just yet. Romano tweeted about 3 hours ago that Brighton have submitted an official bid. Independiente del Valle are open to accept it. Now it's time for the personal terms, the individual contract. There are other clubs still interested. Romano reiterated that Manchester United won't sign him right now. Atlanta's name hasn't come up in a while. Last we heard was the MLS offer was the best on the table at the beginning of this. I don't know if Brighton's offer was there then or if it's new or what. And it sounds like the player wants to go to England or wants to go to Europe. We'll see if other European clubs come into this, if Milan or Ajax or one of the 57 other ones who have been mentioned, if they get into the mix. But I hope it works out for him because I think he's an incredible talent, but I don't know if Brighton is the best spot for him over in Atlanta. But again, as we've said, the fact that Atlanta's in this conversation and in the mix and now would be that comparison. We've said this, Jarrett, for a while now, where when you have players who are being talked about going to a lower tier Premier League club or a championship club compared to what you'll have in Atlanta, the perception is, you got to go to England, but the reality might not truly be that when you're talking about clubs like Brighton.
No, it might not be, and that is the interesting part in all of this. Is do you take the spot in Brighton, or do you kind of bite the bullet and spend a year maybe somewhere where you're going to get not necessarily a guarantee of more playing time? Because okay, as good as he is, we know Atlanta's midfield is clogged, and he'll have to earn the time, and I trust he would earn starts here in Atlanta. He's insanely good. But I do share the similar thing with Brighton of, like, if they get in a relegation battle, man, they're going to roll out what they got. I think long term it could be a good move for Brighton in the sense that let's say, I think I've seen like the $5 million number bantered about him.
That was a while back.
£1.5 million by the Daily Mail, yeah.
Well, okay, so even let's say it's 10.
Yeah.
Let's double it. And let's say it's 10. He's the kind of guy that if he is what you think he is in England, where value is just stupid because TV money, he's the kind of guy you can bring in. Let's say you brought him in for 10 and you overpaid. You think you can flip him for 40 or 50 down the road. So for a place like Brighton, who might get relegated and might need that money, not a bad move. Unfortunately, you might have to wait a couple of years before you cash in on that chip. But maybe he did have that that one-track mind of, I need to get to England, I need to get to Europe right now. And yeah, because I had seen that as well, that the MLS bid was the best financial bid that the club saw.
That was from the sporting director at the club.
Yeah, but if he doesn't want to go to MLS, you can submit major MLS bids all day long until the sun goes down and comes up tomorrow. If he doesn't want to go, he's not going to sign personal terms, then you're not going to bother with it in that sense. You're just going to see what you can get from an English club. And if Brighton had the best bid, fair play to him. I'm tickled at the idea of a Manchester United, though, passing on this and potentially having to pay like $50 million down the road for him. I am absolutely tickled at the idea of Ed screwing this up, whereas you could have paid theoretically, okay, let's say it's $5 to $10 million for him. Cool. You know a place for him right now? Send him on loan.
Right.
Keep him in England and send him on loan. Let him develop.
Yep.
Let him develop in training. Let him develop in the championship or another lower level Premier League. Hell, loan him to Brighton for all I care.
Mm-hmm.
But this, I don't want to call him a generational talent. Is I don't know if that's harsh or if that's unfair. You have this immense young talent who wants to come play for you specifically, and you said, nah, we're not interested. Dude, you're Manchester United. You got the money. Just sign him.
Yeah,
Just sign him and loan him out.
it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Because when Ed drops $50 million on him in a couple years, I'm going to be laughing, and I hope Brighton's laughing all the way to the bank if they're the ones that make money off of it.
Yeah, it's a weird situation. Let me get caught up on a couple questions from the Twitch pitch. Ragamuffin said, I hope he doesn't step into a Brewster/Sheffield situation. I hope the manager actually wants him. Yeah, and that's always the question. You never truly know how these things go. We've had this conversation with Atlanta United for a long time now. I think people understand that in most clubs around the world, this is how it goes. Like, the club will go out and see a prospect. They'll go buy the prospect. You do want to be in alignment with the manager because, especially for a club like Brighton that doesn't invest a ton of money on these kinds of signings, to drop this kind of coin, to fully realize the investment, they're going to have to play him. And if the manager doesn't want to play him, then you've kind of wasted the money, and it's pointless. So hopefully they're on the same page and in alignment there, and we'll find out. Sam Williamson says, either way, 4.5 or 5 mil is pocket change for Uncle Arthur. I had heard that the numbers that they were really getting into, and I don't know if this was offers from clubs who were trying to turn Independiente del Valle's head or if it was the offers that it's going to take to actually get him. There was talk about 4 or 5 early on. I think those numbers have jumped. I heard 8 figures. I heard that it had got over 10 was what it was going to take to get it done. So and
just Independiente Valle running the market as they should in this instance.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. That's where I think he should be, is in around that 10 million range. Walchara says, are we seeing the effects of the pandemic with Atlanta not being able to overpay and get the player like with Barco? And I was going back and forth with Walchara in the Twitch pitch a little bit. They didn't overpay on Barco at the time. I think anybody who has said that they did is talking about it in hindsight, like looking at it now and saying, oh, they overpaid because of what you've seen from him in Atlanta. You can't really do deals that way. I mean, over time you can, but you can't go back and say that was a bad deal at that time because you're talking about a player who was coming off a very good performance in the semifinals and final of the Copa Sudamericana and led Independiente to that win.
Junior in the
He was.
Sudamericana final, y'all.
He was. So they had agreed to a deal before that, and then Independiente came back and wanted more money after that, and you got into a little bit of a back and forth. That's what drug it out for a while. But they'd already agreed to a deal before it, and it was a reasonable deal at the time. He was that kind of a talent. So, when you look back at it, yeah, he's had injuries. You didn't see those coming because he didn't have injuries at Independiente. He didn't have an injury history. So it's just the way these things go sometimes. Sometimes players take longer to develop. Sometimes you have bad luck with injuries. Sometimes it's just not a fit, and you figure out how to move on, and you move on. I think Ezequiel Barco is going to have a good opportunity under Gabriel Heinze. I think he's actually a really good fit for what Gabriel Heinze wants to do, playing on the wing or coming inside and playing centrally from time to time, depending on the opponent. I think he could thrive in the system. I really do. I think he is the right kind of player for it, so I'm excited to see what it could look like. And if it goes well, then everybody will get what they want. And Barco will get a chance to go to Europe. The club will see a return on that investment. And you move on to the next, and that's always how the game plays. It's how it goes. Jason Nix, this is a good question. I want to start with you, John. What do you see as the biggest difference between a Moises Caicedo and MLS youngsters like Aronson and Reynolds that are getting that 8 to 10 million? He says, is it perception? Is it reality? Like, what are you seeing as the main differences between those two?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think that I think it's perception. I think it's media coverage. I think that, when you sit there and you have, highlight packages and all of the blitz of the daily news that comes with players, I think that plays into it as well. I mean, it really takes knowing the world game and studying the world game on a daily basis to know that there's someone out there like a Moises Caicedo who's an Ecuadorian international. I think that the world is closing, don't get me wrong, but I still think that what we see on a daily basis is part of the reality with the players that you mentioned, but at the same time, I think that when you have the elements out there where you can sit there and continue to put video out. You can continue to put stories out. You continue to have all these kinds of blitzes of information. I think that plays into it too.
Okay, Jarrett, what do you think?
Sorry, I was muted.
That's okay.
I think that we, as a globe, still look at the flag next to guys' names, and that dictates value initially.
Yeah.
If Moises Caicedo had a Brazilian flag next to his name, we're having a different conversation. Because he has an Ecuadorian flag next to his name, I think, and has Independiente del Valle next to his name, I think that kind of gives people pause, whether it should or shouldn't. And that's just kind of the breaks of it as things kind of change. I mean, we've seen the same. Like, we had this discussion during the Sudamericana about Barco's value would have been had he been Brazilian and not from Argentina and playing for Independiente. Because remember, like, Vinicius went for
60.
Granted, Vinicius is great. Don't get me wrong; like, he's been really good. It's not a slight on him, but I think when we look at flags and look at country names next to players, there still is kind of that. Almost subliminal in some cases very much not subliminal perception and bias based on where a guy's from.
Yeah.
I think the American perception, the perception of American players is changing more quickly, just because you're seeing guys like McKinney coming over, Josh Sargent until recently. I know he's kind of been up and down with his form of things. Tyler Adams, those guys coming from the United States and being able to be impact players in major leagues, I think that has really escalated the perception of the American players. And you would think a guy like a Miguel Almiron coming from MLS doing what he's done, eventually a Diego Rossi, if LAFC, picks their right target in terms of when and where they sell him. So I think that's a twofold thing of American players. The perception is changing because this isn't like the dark ages. I use that term lightly. Of a Landon Donovan or a Clint Dempsey, and we've got one American over there, and he's got to show what he's got, and he is carrying the weight of the nation on his shoulders. Like, no, now you're exporting a bunch of different guys who are all impacting in different ways and being positive influences on their club. And then the side of it that is pulling guys from MLS and showing that MLS is a place where you can really sharpen up before you go play somewhere else. And for God's sakes, just don't give anyone else to Steve Bruce.
Yeah, please don't do that. Well,
No.
you didn't give him to him,
Because
unfortunately. He came in and took over, so. Ugh.
I know, but still, Steve Bruce. Now we got to clean him like Jacques, the little shrimp in Finding Nemo.
Ugh.
Wherever Mickey goes next, he's got to be clean and sterilized.
Yeah, seems like it. I think the perception's changed because in the past, Moises Caicedo would have went for a whole lot more than Brian Reynolds, and I honestly feel like he should go for more than Brian Reynolds. But right now, you have Serginho Dest, you have Weston McKennie, you have American players going overseas, Alphonso Davies. You do have Miguel Almiron, not American, but came from MLS. You just have a different perception about the American player right now, to the point that Brian Reynolds might go for more money to Juventus with a little bit of help in the meantime than Caicedo might go to England, which to me, in terms of just straight up ability to help now and future potential, I think it should be the other way around. The Ecuadorian League, and we've talked about it on the show, and we've mentioned it when we talk about some of these teams, especially Independiente del Valle, it's a great market to shop in because they develop players in a really strong way. They're not developing one-dimensional players. The prices are good. I mean, if you're able to get a Caicedo for anywhere between $6 and $10 million, that's impressive for a first-team South American national team player right now who's got a lot of room to grow. The American player, it's kind of flipped a little bit. Used to be that they were completely undervalued. I think right now maybe they're a little overvalued, and we'll see where it settles. The market's really weird for American players right now. I'm curious to see the next wave. I'm curious to see the George Bellows, maybe a Miles Robinson from Atlanta. Looking at other players around the league. Does Cole Bassett get a good number thrown at him? Does Gianluca Busio get a good number thrown at him? I want to see what the numbers settle in at. I think right now this Brian Reynolds one is very strange. James Sands potentially, yeah. I mean, there's a bunch. The Brian Reynolds one seems to be changing the market in a big way, and it doesn't really fit with everything else. So I'm a little confused by it. We'll see over time. One other question, Sam Williamson asked about Agustin Almendra from Boca. And I went to double check. He is training with Boca Juniors right now. He's training on the side. He's not training with the main group because he's not eligible to play in league play or Copa Libertadores at the moment. The next league season for Boca will start in February, I think in mid-February. And it's one consideration to keep him for that and see how he does. He hasn't played since November of 19. The other consideration is to move him on, to give him a clean break and a fresh start somewhere. So that is still a possibility. Rumors connecting him to Atlanta have not been brought up for a while because I don't think Boca knows what they want to do. So that's where it stands. I don't know. We've seen this before where a player gets rumored for Atlanta, and I think people might assume that that's the only player they're looking at and they're not chasing anybody else. Usually they've got backup plan upon backup plan upon backup plan. So if Almendra is still in the mix, then he's part of the potential plan to go out and sign a six. There's probably others that we don't know about because I think people always ask, well, then who are the other candidates? I mean, you can probably find 4 or 5 in every league in South America right now that would fit and could be a good fit. And some are older with experience in this kind of a system. Some are younger with great potential. You know, you've got a wide range of possibilities. You start with your main targets, and if Caicedo became one, great. Maybe things fall apart with Brighton and you get him. We'll see. Almendra, you got a lot of things to consider there. Boca does too. We see what happens there. There's other possibilities. There are absolutely other possibilities. So it's not something to freak out about. Bernd asked a question earlier too, and it kind of leads us into the next little topic for a second. Bernd asked because he had seen that Kennesaw State, I guess they're playing football this spring, Jarrett. Is that accurate?
Who?
Yeah. Yeah, yes. The FCS as a group pushed their football schedule to the spring. Okay. 1AA FCS Division II, they all pushed it to the spring. Title game, I think, is set for mid-May.
Okay. It's not FCS football down here. Maybe that's another show that'll be on the network.
John and I could run that together.
Have at it. Have fun. That's not what we're talking about this morning. Burns saw that they were going to allow fans at Fifth Third Bank Stadium and asked if we had heard anything about Atlanta United 2 doing that. Haven't heard anything about Atlanta United 2's schedule or USL Championship schedule yet. Haven't heard anything about the MLS schedule yet, to be perfectly honest. Peter Vermes gave an interview, I think yesterday, and he said that they don't have their plans for preseason yet, and that's not normal and not where they like to be. He doesn't expect preseason camps to start until the beginning of February, which would make me think that the season's going to start maybe mid-March, maybe in that international break or maybe right after the international break. I still think MLS should look at starting the first week of April, which would be the weekend after the March international break. I think that's the best fit. That gives you more time. Now, I don't know anything about CONCACAF yet. We haven't had a draw for 21. I don't think they would want to start it while the Club World Cup is going on or even immediately after, so maybe they're going to push that back. They do have time. You don't have to have a champion until the 2021 Club World Cup because the one in February is actually the 2020 Club World Cup. You don't have to have a champion until early December. So you've got time to figure it out if you're CONCACAF. I'm assuming, because they haven't done a draw and we haven't heard anything, that it's not happening with that first round at the end of February. I don't think that's going to happen if MLS teams are looking at early February training camps. So with USL, I don't know. I think they need fans in the stands even more than MLS does. They had talked about modified schedules, but maybe not quite as modified as they did this past season. I think they'd probably like to hold off until April at the earliest, and maybe even a little bit later. So by that time, it wouldn't surprise me if they had a small number of fans at Fifth Third, because you would have already had the football season mostly done by then, and you would have worked out anything with security and just how things work. So I think it's far more realistic that Atlanta United 2 would have a small number of fans in the building, maybe the same as college football, maybe a little less, I don't know, maybe a little more depending on the time of year that it starts. But I would think that they would if they're doing it for football.
Yeah, to your point, though, if football goes in the door first at Fifth Third, then you can sit there and look at how they handle it, look at their numbers, look at how the procedures are in place, and it would give you a good idea going forward about how you could do things if you were Atlanta United there in Kennesaw.
Yeah, and we'll see how that goes. We haven't talked about Germany yet. Yesterday, if you didn't watch it, at least go back and watch the highlights. Borussia Mönchengladbach came back from 2-0 down against Bayern to win 3-2. It was an amazing match. Huge win for Mönchengladbach. We'll take a look at the table in a second. You got games in the second half right now, and all of them are on ESPN+. Schalke is winning at home right now against Hoffenheim, 1-0. Eintracht Frankfurt is 1-0 on the road at Mainz. Wolfsburg is 1-1 with Union Berlin. Freiburg is 2-0 up at home over Cologne, and scoreless with Leverkusen and Werder Bremen. But the big news is that Schalke result, because they haven't won since the 70s, it seems like.
Yeah.
A long
Schalke
time.
won. Last time Schalke won a game, the sugar rained down in the Sugar Bowl, and Herschel Walker was winning a national title.
I'm just going to leave that one alone.
That's not too far off. I think it's 31 is the record that they don't want from Tasmania Berlin from 1965-66.
Yes, I think that's where it stands. Bayern still leading the table, 33 points. Leipzig, one match in hand at the moment. They are 2 points back. Current table with current results, Leverkusen would be on 29 with the draw. They are currently level. Union Berlin would be in fourth place with their draw. They are currently level. They'd be on 25, and they'd have the tiebreakers over Dortmund, who's in fifth, Wolfsburg in sixth. That's the current table right now as we talk about games in the second half. John, did you watch any Liga MX last night?
No, I did not.
What? You are the Liga MX
the results. Fan. I know, I'm the Liga MX guy, but the result that took me by surprise was the Mazatlan result last night, where Mazatlan in the Apertura had their problems, and they got the result last night, coming out of the blocks, winning 3-2 against Necaxa. They were the favorite. Also, you had Tijuana and Pumas, a goalless draw, and Puebla and Chivas had a 1-1 draw. So, but for me, Mazatlan, their first season, it was kind of clunky in the Apertura, but they come into the Clausura, they get the 3 points. And so I want to see what they do here in the Clausura with this first result and getting them out of the blocks.
Walchara, I'm going to disagree with you again, my friend. Walchara thought Brian Reynolds was a better prospect than Bello. The price seems fair. I do agree with you about Dallas, that what they're doing is really good, but Bello's played more, and he's a left back, and left backs are always at a premium over right backs, because left backs can generally play on the right side. It's a little bit harder for right backs to do the left side as effectively, so I think Bello ultimately will be worth a lot more. I really don't understand why in Atlanta there is a bit of a narrative that George Bello needs all this work. I don't get it. I don't. He was called into the U23 national team camp as one of the youngest players called in. So Greg Berhalter and Jason Kreis are seeing it. I think you go back and you look at his performances over last season. He was one of the youngest players to be a regular in the league. He played very, very well. He will go for a nice transfer fee when that time comes. Maybe it's later this year. More than likely it would be after another full season. I think he'll benefit a lot from working with Gabriel Heinze, because he's the kind of outside back that fits the system really well. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Matt Wagner asks about Gonzalez from Monterrey, if he's still a possibility. Have not heard his name pop up in a while, so I don't know. It'll probably be worth looking at Monterrey's early lineups in Liga MX and seeing if he is a part of the squad, because remember, they've had a coaching change. So maybe things have changed there. Haven't heard his name about a transfer at all in a long time, so don't know if that's still true or not. The numbers that they were talking about before were too high. And they were way too high for what we've seen from Jonathan Gonzalez at this point in his career. We'll see if that's changed, but I wonder if with a new manager in place that maybe his situation at Monterrey has changed a little bit. Just have to wait and see. I mean, Jarrett, it's, I don't know if you're in the same boat. Like, I've kind of zeroed in on that holding midfielder as a position of need for Atlanta United. They do have possibilities in-house. If they go out into the market, is that the position that you're expecting them to go get?
Yeah, either that or, and I know the position is clogged already, and we talked about it being kind of clogged, but either a 6 or an 8 or somewhere in between, because you've got guys who can kind of move around, and I think we've talked about this a bit, is the requirements are different now for your holding midfielder than they were 8 months ago, where you were thinking more of like somebody who's going to sit back and be a bit more of a destroyer. You don't necessarily need that as much in what you're going to be doing. Maybe you ask some of the guys you've got now and see who can do what in terms of playing that position, and you see what works in-house for one position, and you chase the other position on the market, and you see what the best deal you can come up with, whether it's a 6 or an 8. If you can get someone who can kind of game break in the midfield, I think you pull the trigger on it. You're not going to be snobbish about it. But at the same time, you find someone who can be that 6. Hey, you pull the trigger on that too. I think you're looking for what's going to be the best deal for you. And you're looking at what you've already got in-house between guys like Heinemann and Remedi, even though I think we've suspected Remedi is kind of like in the last 6 months of his deal, potentially.
Seems like it.
You still have Rossetto. You still have Mo Adams, who played really well, like above what I thought. And I'm a Mo Adams fan, and I thought he played above what I thought he was capable of at the end of the year when he was on. Yeah,
he played really well in a run of games. I mean,
whether he can do that for a whole year is an entirely different conversation.
Right. You look at what you have in-house, and I think with Mo, you're going to be asking him to be better on the ball, better with his range of passing. Can he elevate his game there? With Remedi, you're going to be asking him to be more secure with the ball and not have the giveaways that we've seen from him in the last maybe 18 months.
Literally, the only thing that drives me nuts about him, the rest of him's fine.
Yeah.
But it seems like whenever he has that bad giveaway, it just comes unraveled for a bit.
And if he's the 6, he's going to have more positional responsibility. Generally, he'll have more positional responsibility because that's the way the system will play out. But as the 6, he'd have even more than we've generally seen him in, and that's been something he's struggled with. Rossetto, he's got the range of passing to play in that role. We just haven't seen him play as much in a deeper role. Is he good enough defensively? I think he's got the size and the physicality needed, just the defensive skills. And that would be the same for Heinemann. Is Heinemann, would he work out playing in that kind of a role? You've got questions about all of them playing there. Moreno would not play there. He would be in one of the more attack-minded roles. Don't get hung up on a 6, an 8, and a 10 with this. Get hung up more on who is going to be behind who in this midfield triangle. There's going to be a triangle. Almost always, Gabriel Heinze will want it to be 1 behind 2. He could see a couple times where you go with that double pivot, that doble cinco, the 2 6s. That's not as common with him at all. Far more likely it'll be 1 player behind 2 others, and it's not like one's an 8 and one's a 10. It's just 2 central midfielders in front of 1. So Moreno fits into that along with somebody, which all the same names we said could be all the same names there. You're asked to do different things in that other role, which would, I think, be better for Rossetto, better for a Heinemann, tougher for an Adams, maybe 50-50 on Remedi playing in a higher-up role in this team. So we'd have to see. But it's going to be different. You're going to be asking different things of the players. And I do think they could use more of a true 6 to make this team fly the way that Gabriel Heinze will want them to. And we just don't know yet. John, I'll ask you first. Ragamuffin says that ESPN is asking if Bayern is falling apart. What do you think?
Falling apart?
Falling apart.
I mean, they have admitted that they are relying on Neuer and Lewandowski at both ends of the starting 11s. I don't think that falling apart is how you want to. No, I don't think they're falling apart. You know, we had the discussions with Liverpool and other teams at the tops of tables in other leagues that are dominant. I don't think they're falling apart. You know, they're all in there. They always have rough patches, or if you want to call them that, or whatever. I don't think they're falling apart. It's how they navigate through this particular time of year and get into international play and how they balance all of it. Falling apart, no. Rough patch, yes. How do you manage it? That's the question for me. I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, falling apart feels a little harsh, but they didn't look good yesterday. They didn't look good as that match went on. A few folks were watching the Liga MX last night. You had Tijuana and Pumas on FS2 in English. Always a good call. Always fun to hear Kobe Jones on Liga MX.
Yep.
Puebla, Guadalajara, 1-1 draw. Tijuana, Pumas, scoreless. Mazatlan, as you mentioned, John, 3-2 winners. Today, you've got Atlas hosting Monterrey, Tigres hosting Leon, and Club America and Santiago Solari's first match hosting Atletico San Luis. In Argentina, on Fanatis, and also on TIC, if you have TIC through other means, but we highly recommend www.fntz.co/soccer down here. I know John was doing the hand signals, even though you can't see him, because that's what he always does.
Absolutely correct.
Whoa, settle down. Games tonight that are big
John,
ones.
excited.
Seriously. Big ones when it comes to the Copa Diego Armando Maradona, because it is the final match day in the second group phase. Now, you've even got two separate group phases because it's Argentina and it's complicated. I'll try to clarify it for you. 7:30 are the big games. Group A. Boca, River, or Argentinos Juniors could win the group. Both games at 7:30. River is playing Independiente. It's at Banfield Stadium because River has been hosting their games at Independiente, but they're playing Independiente, and they don't want to give them whatever home field advantage they would have with no fans there, so they're moving it to Banfield. Argentinos is hosting Boca. Boca controls their own destiny. If they win, they're in. No questions asked. Others get a little more complicated. River would obviously need some help from Argentinos. If Argentinos wins and Boca doesn't, then Argentinos would move on to the final. In the other group, it's decided tomorrow. Banfield's in control of it. They host San Lorenzo. Talleres is hoping that Banfield doesn't win and they win so they could jump them. They go to Santa Fe to play Colón. Gimnasia still has a chance too. They need Talleres and Banfield to both lose, and they need to win against Tucumán. Not all that likely. The two group winners in the championship group, they play in a final. The winner goes to the 2021 Copa Libertadores. They call it the Complementación group. It's basically the teams that finish in the bottom half of the first group phase. It's like a consolation group, kind of. Group A, Rosario Central pretty much got it done. They play Lanús at 3:10 today. Group B comes down to Newell's or Vélez. Both of those games kick off at 5:20 today. All of those games, all of those mini games that we talked about on Fanatis, fntz.co/soccer down here.
You want juice boxes for any of them?
Sure, give me the juice boxes on the Boca and River stuff.
Boca plus 131, Argentinos Juniors plus 219. Your draw is a plus 204. River minus 185, Independiente a plus 500, and your draw a plus 287 in the composite, courtesy of our friends at Oddsport.
Don't do anything with Independiente. They're an absolute mess right now. Boca Argentinos, that's an intriguing one. I don't know where to go with it, to be honest. I'm going to watch that one and enjoy it. I don't know what direction to go. Boca could be distracted with Libertadores this week and what they have to do going to Brazil and getting a result. So that number on Argentinos isn't too bad. I could be tempted.
Okay. And let's see the numbers for the games tomorrow in the winners stage as it is listed by Odds Portal. Let's see. Bonfield a plus 104. Teixeira's a plus 112. Gimnasia is a plus 102.
Okay. Should be Bonfield. I think they get it done. I think they go through, and I think it's Bonfield. It's tricky because of Boca and River playing in Libertadores. Now, River doesn't have much of a chance in Libertadores in midweek, but they can't rest people. Boca can't rest people. Does Argentinos take charge of it? Because Boca and River are both already in the 21 Libertadores. So, yes, they'd like a trophy, and especially this trophy for different reasons. Boca would want it because it's got Maradona's name on it. River would want it just to spite Boca because it's got Maradona's name on it. Yep. Argentinos would like to have it because that's where Maradona started. They might sneak in, although an Argentinos Bonfield final would actually be a really good match. That'd be a fun one to see. That other group, the Complementación phase, which is really complicated, they will have a final between their two group winners. The winner of that final will play the loser of the championship group final for a spot in the 2022 Copa Sudamericana because it's Argentina and it's crazy. Yeah, there's always
this needs a flow chart, like a GAM, TAM, MLS re-entry draft flow chart.
I just can't believe I actually remembered it all.
Nicely done.
Yeah, it's madness. I'm pretty sure I got all that right. A couple other rumors.
Probably sacrificed some brain cells from like CD Warehouse era.
I did. I started to get a headache as I was explaining it. Other silly season rumors. Sergio Aguero is now being linked to PSG. Pochettino reportedly wants to sign him. He will be available on a free transfer in the summer. So, I mean, he's going to be a free, so you never know. Lionel Messi, conversation about how PSG would make this work financially because there is that financial fair play thing that PSG likes to ignore. But also, Messi would probably cost them a whole lot of money in salary. Neymar is already costing them a lot of money in salary. Mbappe, if he signs a new deal to stick around, it would cost them a lot of money to stick around, probably Neymar level in that 30 million euro a year net range. They're expecting Messi would be in the 60 million euro net per year. Madness. Could they make that work? Reportedly, PSG is going to try to make this work. Of course, another way to make it work a little bit easier from a financial perspective would be to move Mbappe to Real Madrid. And according to reports in Paris, they would be more likely to keep Neymar than Mbappe if they had to choose one. Jarrett, you think they're choosing correctly?
Depends. Does it mean getting Lionel Messi?
It might.
Then yes, potentially. Otherwise, no, potentially. I would rather have Mbappe long term, but
yeah,
I could see keeping Neymar if it means we're going to get Messi in here and Sergio Aguero, and we're just going to make a Voltron and see what happens.
We'll see. The Brian Reynolds saga.
Yeah, financial fair play won't matter anyway. It won't come calling for like 2 years, and by the time it does, it'll just go away. They'll pay their way out of it. It's fine. I'm not even worried about them in financial fair play at this point.
Walchar, I think we're going to have to get you an overview on the academy and maybe some of the realities, because I think you might have been misled by some folks about some things. We'll get into it later. It's a long topic, and we're going for about 5 more minutes. So we'll figure that out another time. We'll talk more about it in the offseason because we'll have a little bit of time to do it. Brian Reynolds. Looks like the deal is going to be this. He will go to Benevento for the rest of the season. They will do the transfer at Juventus' behest, and I think Juventus will basically pay them back in the summer because Juve can't bring on another non-EU player right now. They don't have room to bring them on because of the roster restrictions. Talks are progressing well. It would be an €8 million, $10 million transfer for Reynolds. The question would be just how it shakes out with Benevento, and is it 6 months or is it potentially longer for him to stay with Benevento? Their sporting director, Pasquale Foggia, said to Sky Sport in Italy, We're negotiating to sign him with Juventus as that next destination, but it's not a done deal. We're interested because Reynolds is a real talent. That's where things stand. And Fabrizio Romano has been all over that one. He's had all the good updates on it. A couple others. Toby Alderweireld is looking like he might go to PSV at the end of the season. I think he's out of contract at the end of the year, John. Do you remember?
I think he is too. I think you're right.
I think he did a one-year deal. So
I
it
think
looks
that
like
was the renewal.
PSV could be coming in for him. And then Manchester United, Ole has said that Sergio Romero, Marcos Rojo can both leave the club this month. They had just come back, so they can go. Romero has been linked to Miami. Rojo's been linked to Boca Juniors. We'll see what kind of deals get done. And Newcastle and Southampton are trying to get left back Brandon Williams on loan, and he wants to go on loan because he wants to get games. Played well last year, and he's just not getting games right now. So he wants to move. We'll see which one he ends up at. I'd vote for Southampton because Newcastle would be not fun.
No.
But as an outside back, you would be kind of busy. So I guess it's a little different. If you're an attacking player, you would hate it. As an outside back, maybe it's not too
You're
bad.
also busy jumping over the trenches in World War I in the Somme. Doesn't mean it's good.
There's that. That's true. Jason Nick says, if Caicedo doesn't happen and Almendra talks have cooled, who's next on my wish list as a 6?
Start the conversation.
Don't even pretend to. Don't even. They'll find somebody you haven't thought of.
No, I've got one name that I would add. I mean, it's not a crazy name. This is the thing. Like, you could pull so many different players. There is a player that the question would be, would he be willing to move again, or could you move him again? But he played for Heinze at Argentinos Juniors in that second division year where they won the title. Esteban Rolón. He, at the end of that season, got I think almost $4 million transfer from Argentinos to Malaga, and we know the situation that Malaga has had. It didn't work out for him because nothing worked out for Malaga, and he went back to Argentina and just signed on a free in November with Huracan, I believe. You know, would he be willing to move again? Would they be willing to sell him if you needed to sell him? He was a player valued at, like, now, and this is crazy because it shows you how wild it can be when you get into these valuations and you can't put stuff in stone. He was sold for $3.5 million not long ago. He just signed on a free, and now he's valued at like $440,000 according to Transfermarkt. So I have no idea what he would cost, but he's played in the system, and he's played well in the system, well enough to earn a move to La Liga because Malaga was a La Liga club at the time. Would he be a possibility to come back? He'd be a known quantity to Heinze. So, you know, he's the one like that would make sense because you're not going to get Gaston Jimenez from Chicago, who played for him at Vélez. Gago's retired, so Rolón would be one you could look at if he was available. But there's a bunch of others. There's a bunch of other both young central midfielders that you could mold into that 6, or veterans like, and Rolón's not really, he's 25, but he is a guy who's played in the system and knows it. So he would be able to come in and understand the terminology, understand the rotations, understand what Heinze would want from him. I think you go one of those two directions. Either young and mold and potentially be ready to move on, or a veteran who has been there and done that in a style of play and gets it. I think it's one or the other.
Schalke's up 3-0.
I was going to say,
wow.
Matthew Hoppy's got a hat trick.
Looks like Schalke is going to get it done.
The first American teenager with a hat trick in Bundesliga.
It's madness.
More goals than Josh
kid.
Sargent has scored this year.
Boy.
Woo, buddy. Let's talk. Let's talk about it at another time.
At another time. I'll run through real fast on the Twitch pitch. Turner asked if we talked about the FA being complete idiots with their whole situation with Cavani and criticizing Manchester United for not training him properly. I'm trying not to talk about that situation so I don't blow my throat out because it makes me very, very angry. It's very stupid. They are morons. So I will not talk about it again, Turner. Yes, financial fair play is just a suggestion. Alex Pacini, I have no idea what's happening at Schalke. It's madness. They have lost their minds. Yes, I should have apologized, Ragamuffin, to Alex Pacini when I said that Newcastle is not fun. I definitely should have apologized. Ricky Ricardo, congratulations. We'll find out if he is having a MLS or NWSL player later today. Very cool. I'm sure you will keep us posted, Ricky. Congrats on whatever happens today. That'll be very cool. And lots of conversation about Atlanta United too. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to preseason games coming up. Looking forward to, I guess the Super Draft is kind of almost like the kickoff to the new season. And that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And we haven't really had a big Super Draft focus since year one. And we've got the 5th pick with Atlanta United this year. So there'll be lots of stuff to get into. So we'll have plenty to talk about coming up. Jarrett, hopefully you can join us again sometime.
Yeah, we can do that. Why not?
Maybe. Possibly.
Yes.
We will do our best. John will be back in Georgia sometime?
Week from tomorrow.
A week from tomorrow.
Yeah, because remember, this is after this trip here is next week's shows will be from the Gulf.
You remember that there are other people listening.
Yes,
and they don't know these things.
Every single year for the anniversary week, the boss and I go to the Gulf of Mexico. So I will be in Florida. So I'll be in an entirely different state starting tomorrow for the next week.
Good times. We'll see if John has video. We are crossing our fingers. It is possible.
Yeah, we are too.
It is not a definite, but we will see what happens. So we'll be back on Monday. For those of you in the Discord, I'm sure we'll be talking about different things that go on all weekend. There might be typing from the Gulf, Matt Wagner. It's very possible. Don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But y'all have a good rest of the day.
Quieter.
It could be. There's no telling. But y'all have a good rest of the day. Have a good weekend, and we'll be back on Monday. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.